just take a few seconds. High-speed rail is the proposal to do a train from Northern California to Southern California. It was only last August 2014, that we found out that we're studying a route directly from Palmdale to Burbank that would go through this area. It wasn't until December that they gave us an outline of 3 routes. They called them the East Corridor, E1, E2, and E3. And we could study a map and we could see exactly where those routes were, what streets they went by, where they went over. And how many of you have seen a map, a high-speed rail map, to have an idea where those routes are? Okay, that earlier map had one route, we call it up near Cagle Canyon, and then it came right really through here and around Hanson Dam, through the west part of Hanson Dam. And then there was another 2 routes called E2 and E3, and each of those came through the mountains, and they opened up right in Lakeview Terrace here, one near Wheatland and one a little further down toward the golf course. And it went by a bridge, by an elevated bridge, across Foothill Boulevard, across the 210 freeway, across the Big Tonga Wash, into the side of Shadow Hills, and then underground to Burbank Airport. Those were the 3 routes that were in play as of December. It was just 3 nights ago on Tuesday where we saw the next version of their proposed routes, the next version of their maps. We are in the process of getting those maps onto our website, which is www.don'trailroad.us. That means Don't Railroad Us. It's also going to be on Facebook, and it's also going to be on the daily email that the Shadow Hills Property Owners Association sends out. Shortly after that, we think the neighborhood councils will put all the maps on the website, and you'll be able to see in more detail. None of us, myself included, have been able to see a map that goes down to street level detail so far since Tuesday night. We've seen a map that is very general. Let's say it's from 10,000 feet. You can't make out a lot of detail yet, but I'm going to tell you what the changed maps look like so you have some idea of what to look for. The changes that they've made, and many of our residents here have written letters, they've showed up at meetings, they have communicated with their elected officials, they've communicated with the high-speed rail people about how we don't want the routes here, we don't like anything about it, and that has caused the high-speed rail people to make some changes. Here are the changes, and I'm not saying they're good, I'm not saying they're bad. These are the changes we learned about 3 days ago, and these changes were made by high-speed rail based on the input they've gotten from everybody like us, and based on what they want to do. The first thing they did was they took that E1 route, the one that was closest to Cagle Canyon, and they've moved it further west and further north. There is no longer a route that goes close to Cagle Canyon, and there is no longer a route that comes out of the ground like that route did. Listen, I'm just talking about that first route right now, because that first route used to come out of the ground near Wildlife Way Station. It stayed out of the ground until the shooting range, okay? That route is now moved a number of miles away, and it's underground the entire route, okay? That's one change. The route called E2, which is closest to Wheatland and goes over the freeway and over Foothill, over the Big Tonga Wash, that route remains unchanged. The tunnel openings, the bridge, everything about that route is still the same. So we have a lot of work left in terms of communicating on that. The third route was called E3. That was a little further down Wheatland, and we're further down Foothill, I'm sorry. A little further down, anybody know a landmark or a street? Near All Nations Church, okay? Everybody know where that parking lot is? And that used to go across the wash, also into Shadow Hills. That route has been changed. It's not gone, but it has moved further east. It has moved toward Riverwood Ranch and toward the golf course. And it is fully underground. Those are the changes that we know as of now. Again, we're gonna get the detailed maps up as soon as we can, and once we're able to analyze it, we will then start communicating with everybody on the types of things you should or could be saying or writing to the high-speed rail folks and to your elected officials here. Now, I want to explain something that it's complicated, but I'm going to put it in terms I think you'll all understand. Everybody here went to school at some point, right? Everybody here had an exam or a final exam or a midterm at some point in their life, right? Okay. I'm going to draw a comparison between the exam that you took and what's called an environmental impact study. Okay? The environmental impact report, the environmental impact study, is something that's going to start in about 2 to 3 months. That's like the test. The study that will start in 2 to 3 months is like the test. What's happening right now is they're deciding what will go in to the environmental study, just like the teacher or the professors that would be deciding on what questions are going into the exam. The good thing here is that when you're in school, you can't tell the teacher what to put on the exam, and you can't even lobby for it. But right now, in the next 2 to 3 months, we have the ability to write, to call, to meet, and to demand what goes in the environmental studies. And that is what we're trying to do right now. We are trying to make sure that the environmental studies that are going to take anywhere from 3 to 5 years to get done, that's 3 to 5 years, have better routes in them at that point than they do right now. Because the routes that are in there right now, we will flunk the exam. It is an exam that is not in our favor. It's an exam that is in the state and the high-speed rail people's favor. But we have the ability to talk to the teacher, to talk to the professor, and have input on what these environmental studies review. Does anybody here know about the 710 freeway and the extension of the 710 freeway? And they talked about tunnels and, okay, if any of you have heard about that in the news, what you're hearing about right now is that the environmental studies for that project just got completed. They were started 4 years ago. For 4 years, the environmental study on the 710 tunnel and the 710 freeway has been going on. That covers a 5-mile area. The route from Palmdale to Burbank is anywhere from 35 to 45 miles. That means that study is going to take at least 3 or 4 or 5 years. That study is going to be very public. It's going to be very stressful. It's like the night before the final exam, the night before the test. You know how sick you felt the day before a big test, whether you were prepared or not. If we don't do our work in the next 2 to 3 months, we're not going to feel good for the next 3 to 5 years, because that work, that test, that study is going to be going on, and we're going to be worried about what the outcome's going to be. So we're got the new routes a couple of nights ago. We're studying them. We're going to be calling for meetings. We're going to be going around to all the organizations in the area. You've got to look at these websites for the neighborhood council. The high-speed rail, our opposition group, has a table right over here. There's a flyer there. Please pick one up, or we may leave one on the windshield wiper of your car. It has the website on it. That's the best way to follow what's going on. But honestly, folks, if you hear there's a meeting related to this topic, please turn out. Please find a way to get there. Please find a way to bring a friend. The more people we involve, the more letters we write, the more phone calls, the more the elected officials are going to listen. And to whatever degree these routes have changed so far, it's because of the outcry that the community has made. If we think this is over, we're going to get run over. This is a real battle in terms of what goes into these environmental studies. You have to break it into 2 pieces. The environmental study is not the end of the world, but it's important to what the end of the world's going to look like. We have got to get this right in the next 2 to 3 months. Once that's over, then we're going to go another 3 to 5 years. But I'll tell you, you'll sleep a lot better, you'll feel a lot better if you provide input into what goes into these environmental studies. If anybody has a question, I'd be happy to answer it. But again, we just saw these new maps a couple of nights ago. They were on a board, and we haven't had a chance to study them in detail.